To the Conservatives, congratulations on your recent election win. While losing the popular vote by almost 3 million, your candidate has won the Electoral College, which, as we all know, is the important thing. I would say this is unprecedented, but it's not. It's not even unprecedented in my lifetime. But then again, W, he was a president I could tolerate. But this is not George W. Bush. But wait, you said. Let's give Trump a chance. Let's see what he does. Let's begin with this guy's appointments, okay? Where to start? Well, I'm from Michigan, same as Betsy DeVos, Trump's Department of Education appointment. Betsy DeVos is the chairwoman of the Winecrest Group, an investment management firm in Michigan, and the former chair of the Republican Party of Michigan. Cool. Okay. So far, so good. She's a Republican. That's okay. I can forgive her for that. Trump ran on a Republican platform, so I can't blame him for affiliating with the party. What about her qualifications? Well, she's never been a classroom teacher. Guess that's okay. You don't really need to be a teacher to be a Secretary of Education, right? But I wanted to see how many Secretary of Education positions are actually held by former teachers. And it turns out only about half the previous Secretary of Education positions were held by K-12 teachers. I suppose I can't really fault DeVos for that. Let's keep going. What's her ideology? Apparently she's a big supporter of vouchers and school choice, which includes charter schools. Charter schools are for-profit schools, so I don't know how I really feel about that. This part I have a little bit of trouble with, and I'll tell you why. As of 2013, charter schools have spread out to 41 states and enrolled some 2 million students. Furthermore, a study executed by the Stanford University determined that students from charter schools have performed just as good or below students who attended public school. So here we have crumbling public schools in Michigan, which provide just as good of an education to students, but money is being filtered to these for-profit charter schools and away from these public schools. And Betsy DeVos is okay with that. I find that a little offensive. Okay, maybe you are okay with for-profit charter schools and tax dollars going towards them. Oh, I forgot to mention that part. Charter schools are publicly funded. Furthermore, charter schools are free to apply to, but there is a limited number of positions and the teachers are not held to as high standards as they are in public schools. Let's move on from DeVos. Trump also appointed Steve Mnuchin to Treasury Secretary. Mnuchin is a finance executive who has worked for companies such as Goldman Sachs and Soros Fund Management. Cool. A Wall Street guy to get us into another mess like the housing crisis in 2008. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's try to keep an open mind on the guy. The first issue with the appointment is that Trump made claims during his campaign that he would drain the swamp, meaning to me that he wasn't going to appoint any of his friends from the big banks, but instead those who might actually help create policy meant to assist the American people. Disregarding what Trump said, let's take a look at Mnuchin based on policy. Well, Mnuchin is a critic of Dodd-Frank. What is Dodd-Frank, you ask? Dodd-Frank is legislation passed by the Obama administration in response to the housing crisis of 2008. You remember the housing crisis, don't you? You know, that thing where a bunch of folks had their houses foreclosed on, graduates coming out of college couldn't find employment? Yeah, that crisis. Mnuchin is against the legislation that was put in place to prevent that from happening. Again. Dodd-Frank established the SEC Office of Credit Ratings. Since credit rating agencies were accused of giving misleading favorable investment ratings that contributed to the financial crisis, the office is tasked with ensuring that agencies improve their accuracy and provide meaningful and reliable credit ratings of the businesses, municipalities, and other entities they evaluate. So basically, you have this SEC Office of Credit Ratings that oversees everything. Yeah, Mnuchin, gone with it. Furthermore, Dodd-Frank strengthened the whistleblower program so people won't feel so afraid to inform an agency when a company they work for is doing something unethical or illegal. Then there's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Mnuchin wants to privatize those two. For those of you who don't know, privatization is the process of taking an industry run by the government in the public sector and moving it to the private sector, part of the economy not under government control. So it becomes nonprofit to for-profit. So that's cool, right? Undue regulations put in place to prevent another financial crisis and privatize affordable government programs so only the privileged can utilize them. Mnuchin sounds like a real winner. Let's keep going. President-elect Donald Trump formally named two staunch opponents of net neutrality to oversee his policies for the agency that created the rules to prevent discrimination against internet sites and online services. Jeff Eisenach and Mark Jamieson were named to Donald Trump's agency landing team. These two guys will now be advising Donald Trump on FCC policy. So, what do we know about them? Jeff Eisenach is an economist who has been working for Verizon, and Mark Jamieson has been on Sprint's lobbying team. Both are opponents of net neutrality. For those of you who don't know, net neutrality is this piece of legislation that keeps communication companies from overcharging you for using competitive products. For instance, Comcast offers services for watching cable television, as well as being an internet service provider. Everyone knows you can use the internet to watch television shows using services like Amazon Prime Instant Movie, HBO Now, and of course everyone's favorite, Netflix. Before the Net Neutrality Act, Comcast could 1. Throttle your network connection to these sites. They can control how fast or how slow you download information from Netflix, from Amazon Prime. 2. They can create low quality viewing, not being able to view video from these services at all. Instead of just throttling how fast you get the information, they can shut it out altogether. 3, they can charge you extra to disable this throttling if you want to go and use these services. Both Jeff Eisenach and Mark Jamieson want to get rid of this net neutrality, this legislation that forbids Comcast and Time Warner and other companies, other internet service providers from doing it, so that you have to use their services instead. That is eliminating competition, and that is showing favor towards big businesses like Comcast and Time Warner, and that's wrong. For content creators, independent and sponsored, this is horrible news. Why should it cost more to upload and download data depending on where I do it? The answer is that it shouldn't. The internet should be a free and public space where it doesn't matter if we watch our entertainment programs from the internet or from our cable service provider. Anything otherwise is just greed. It's that simple. Scott Pruitt was recently appointed to head the EPA by Donald Trump. Scott Pruitt is the Oklahoma Attorney General who is suing the EPA over climate change. That's right, the person Donald Trump appointed to run the EPA is in fact suing the EPA. He is suing the EPA on the basis that it has overreached in its regulations, specifically on those regulations to combat climate change. I want to take a moment to talk about climate change. If you still don't believe in climate change, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. All you have to do is use your favorite search engine and look up the effects of climate change. Shrinking polar ice caps, increased severe storms like Sandy that rocked New Jersey, etc., etc., etc. If you do believe in climate change, but you don't think humans are playing a role in climate change, then 1, I want you to look at the weather patterns since the Industrial Revolution. Not only in America, but in China, India, etc. And 2, even if we aren't responsible for creating climate change, shouldn't we be responsible for fixing it? If a river is flooding, we don't sit idly by and let the rising river flood the area. We get sandbags and build a makeshift wall to hold the water back. If a snowstorm comes, we don't let it destroy our roads. We get out there, we shovel, and we salt. If the climate is changing, are we just going to continue to sit by and let it happen? I think something should be done regardless if humans are playing a part in climate change or not. To me, it's just common sense, but it's just my opinion. Rick Perry was selected by Trump to head the Department of Energy, one of the 3 departments he said he would do away with if he was elected president when he ran. Energy is the same story as the EPA. America needs to stop depending on fossil fuels and focus more on renewable resources. With Perry at the helm of the Department of Energy, I doubt that's going to happen. So, in conclusion, Republicans, you have voted for 1. The defunding of public schools and a greater focus on for-profit charter schools, which have limited space and perform just as well, if not worse, than public schools. 2. The repeal of Dodd-Frank, which is legislation that put in place to prevent another recession like that which the United States suffered in 2008. 3. The end of net neutrality, which means big internet service providers like Comcast and Time Warner are going to stomp out competition of entertainment services like Netflix in favor of their services. Furthermore, by ending net neutrality, it will be more difficult for small startup companies to have an internet presence. 4. A greater focus on fossil fuels like oil and coal, which if continued to be consumed will lead to irreversible effects on the climate and environment, or at the very least will not aid in reversing the already apparent effects of climate change occurring, regardless of who is responsible for these effects. So when you say let's give him a chance, we don't know what he's going to do yet. I look at his cabinet picks and I can see pretty clearly what he's going to do, and it's scary. We'll never know what Hillary Clinton would have done with her cabinet. But if you take away Clinton, if you remove her completely from the picture, can you still look at this list of picks for Donald Trump's cabinet and be satisfied? If so, then sincere congratulations to you on your win. Donald Trump's victory is just as much yours as it is his. However, if you can look at this and say, I don't agree with Betsy DeVos's favoritism towards charter schools, or I don't agree with the abolishment of net neutrality, then I ask you to join me in a discussion. This country is divided enough, and I think it's high time we found some common ground. Thank you.